Hey up, how are you doing? Welcome to the Yorkshire Bike Mechanics YouTube channel. It is so good to be back. Do you know, I have been so poorly with COVID. It's been horrendous. I wouldn't recommend it on anybody, honestly. I wouldn't recommend it on my worst enemy. My head feels like it's been like a bloody big roller coaster. I feel absolutely drained. But anyway, I am back. COVID free, tested negative, so back to it, back working in the shop. Today, it's a proper treat of a video today because look what I've got. Yes, you will recognise this as a Bosch 4-gen e-bike motor, okay? Now these things, I have to say, are an absolute nightmare to work on, okay? So, this video is about how to take one to bits. But I want to try and discourage you from doing that, if you like, because it is not an easy job at all. You will need to make some tools, okay? You can't buy the tools to be able to do this. You're going to have to make them, okay? So I don't kind of encourage you to do it. But what I wanted to do is show you how it comes to bits and the way it needs to come to bits to actually do it right. Now don't forget, these things, they've not been out all that long, to be honest. And a lot of them, well in fact nearly all of them, are still in warranty. You've got 2 years warranty on these, okay? And if your motor is sounding rough and it's just outside that warranty, then don't despair, because Bosch are brilliant at looking after its customers. Even if your motor is outside that 2-year warranty, don't go start taking it to bits. Take it to your Bosch dealer and they'll help you. They'll speak to Bosch and they'll try and get a solution to your problem. It's a lot easier than taking it to bits. And believe you me, when you watch this, you'll wonder why anybody would want to do it in the first place. But nevertheless, here it is. Let's crack on. Treat this motor like a piece of glass, okay? That's the only way I can describe how to start going about taking one of these to bits. So before we even start to think about lifting this case off here, it is ultra important that you actually get the 2 circlips over there, as you can actually see. Let me see if it's in focus. Okay, so you can see that I've actually got 2 circlips over that section there, in between the crankshaft and the drive shell, just there. Now that is ultra important that you do that. If you don't do that and you don't keep this from lifting at the same time when you take the case off, you will damage the torque sensor for sure. So that is mega important that this is locked on the crankshaft. The thing that we need to concentrate first of all is this bit here, okay? Now there's a small little circlip on the inside of there. Now it's easier to do with a little pricker. It needs to be fairly sharp, and if you get your pricker under the end and just lever it away from the actual rotor crankshaft and lift it up and then go around the outside. Okay, lift that off and then put it to one side. Okay, that's that off. The next thing we need to take off is just this little seal here, and you'll just feel it lift up. Okay, you need to pull it off square because it won't come off otherwise. Be careful with your pricker, you don't want to damage that seal. Okay, that just comes off nice and neat. And there's a little rubber seal as well that needs to come off, so that needs to come off as well. Okay, so that leaves this particular section exposed. Now if you remember, we took this circlip off here. Now I've actually got another circlip that I've actually got separately, and I'll show you why we're going to need that. Now, this particular shaft here, the crankshaft here, the pedal shaft, is independent of this particular section here, this outer section here, and it actually spins completely independent of this particular piece here. Now, the torque sensor is the most delicate thing you've ever imagined in this particular motor, and it's fastened to this particular section here under here. Okay, it's fastened to there. So if you were to start thinking, right, I'm going to knock that up and loosen that, or take the case off and then knock that up and loosen that, you'd be badly mistaken, because you will damage it straight away if you decide to do that. What we need to do is we need to isolate this from this particular section here, and we need to stop this piece rising up when we take this case off. And the way to do that basically is to put this circlip back on there, but we'll actually put it in a different place. We'll put it right down at the bottom. We'll push it as far as we go at the bottom, so it's up against right down there, and that will stop this coming away from this when we're taking this particular case side off. I'm going to put another one on there as that, just to stop that moving. That's how crucial this particular point is. Okay, you don't want that moving when you take the case off. Okay, so what we need to do now, we're ready to take this case side off. Okay, now the bolts, they're actually a security nut, and you would looking at them think they'd be actually Torx, but they're not. They're actually a Star Plus bolt. Okay, a security Star Plus bolt, and really that's the only thing that you should use to actually go ahead and undo these things. You can actually see they're actually a star nut, a star tool, rather than a Torx. Okay, so let's go ahead and get them undone. So there's an easy way and a hard way of getting this particular case off. If you look at sides, they're actually little lever points. You can actually get little screwdrivers under there and start to lever it off. So that's the way that we're actually going to start it, but what we're going to need to do, the easy way to do it, is to use a bearing puller or a crank puller, and we'll use this to actually pull this case off. It'll be much easier than trying to lever it off, because don't forget, this is quite delicate and we want to be able to leave that in its place. So what I'll do is I'll just get a little screwdriver in there, and I'll just gradually lever this side. Okay, we'll go a puller in there. Okay, and we're going to use this. This will actually go in each side like that, and it will help us pull this particular case off squarely without having to damage anything. Just gently persuade it. That's it. Nice and steady. And you don't want that moving up. That needs to stay where it is. Okay. Okay, take that out. And this should lift off really nicely. There we are. Okay. Now that's the outer case. There's these two bearings in here that you can see. Those are to change. Fairly straightforward. There's a circlip on the other side of that one. This one you can use a blind bearing puller to pull that out. Two fairly straightforward bearings. So we'll put that to one side. We're not going to change the bearings. This video is about how to actually disassemble this the right way. So here we are. Let's take this gasket off. Put that to one side. So here Okay, we'll need to take this rubber cover off. We need to be very careful what we're doing now that we've actually got that casing off, and we've got it off. This is actually not moved. This particular connector here is the other side of the speed sensor, the torque sensor. Okay, so that actually runs under there and it fastens to the other side. That is the bit that we need to be super careful of. Okay, now the first thing that we need to do with this particular motor now is we need to remove this cog, this drive cog, off this shaft. Okay, it will pull up off this shaft, but we need to keep this particular this crankshaft here and this outer drive pulley here. We need to keep them exactly in the same place. Okay, so, and we need to be able to pull this off the this particular shaft without touching anything else underneath. Now, there's a little plastic shield here which moves about slightly. It moves about enough to be able to just get a little bit of a lever under there and a little bit of a lever on the other side. What we need to do basically is lift that wheel up there. Okay, very, very carefully. Okay, and you can actually see it coming up. Okay, we're not damaging anything on the board because we're above this plastic piece. Okay, and we just lift that up till it comes free. This piece is staying exactly where it is because we've got our circlips on. Okay, now we take that off and we can actually pull that very, very gently off. Okay, there's a one-way clutch bearing in there. You can actually see that there. Okay, that'll need to be changed if we're changing all the bearings. Again, that'll be done on a bearing press. Now this actually leaves now this section exposed, okay, with the torque sensor in place. This particular black plastic cover we can take off now. Okay, we can just lift it off. It's just clipped on that far side. We can just lift that off very carefully and it'll come directly off. That leaves the transfer gears inside. Okay, this particular connector we need to just take off the board very, very carefully. Okay, and leave it to one side. The next thing that we need to do is we need to take this board off this case. Okay, now we can take this board out now, but again, can you see this section here? What's happened in this particular, the reason why I've got this motor is because it's been damaged. Unfortunately, the customer decided to take it to bits himself and didn't kind of realise how it all came to pieces. And so this particular section here that you can see here, which was soldered to that particular board there, okay, that's all part of the torque sensor. It's very, very, very sensitive, and you don't want to go and try and force it and move it around. Okay, there's a certain procedure, like we're showing. This is actually the way it goes. Okay, so what we need to do is lift this off this board here. Lift this off the case rather. Move the torque sensor wires. Okay, and then we can put that to one side, out of the way where it can't get damaged. Right, so the next thing that we need to remove is the actual motor itself, the actual armature, which is in here. So that means this whole section needs to come out of the case. But again, we need to be really, really careful because this whole thing is a massive magnet and it has to come out square. If it doesn't come out square, you will damage what's underneath and inside. And once I start to take this off, you'll understand why. So the best thing to do is get 3 long bolts. These are actually from a Bros motor. So I'm just going to put these in very, very loose where the old bolts came out. Okay, and what that's going to do basically, when we lift this section up, it's actually going to come out nice and square, nice and even, not to catch anything underneath. So the way that we actually lift this up, there's two lever points. There's one here underneath, which we can use half a finger from the puller, okay, which goes under there. You can just get it in there, and we can use that to pull one side up. Under the other side, which is here, you can actually see there's a little tab. Okay, we can actually use that to start to lift this section away. The circlips are still on here. Okay, don't forget we need to keep this exactly still. And this section here, this drive cog here, when this needs to be down, completely rigid to this crankshaft here as well. So don't forget that that needs to be still the same. There's a little tab here that we really don't want to use if we can help it. It is quite thin, and this thing's got a lot of magnetism to it, and it does take a lot of lifting off. So what we basically do is we use this to start to lever, get round the other side, and we just gradually lift it away. But it has to come out square, otherwise it'll damage it underneath. Okay, so now that's away from the body. We'll just take these bolts out and put them to one side. And as you can see, when this comes out, it comes out with the transfer gears, it comes out with everything. Okay, and you can actually see inside there. These are the things that you've got to watch, these leaves. If you catch these on the side, then you'll damage it, and your motor will be gone. So you have to be careful with these particular little magnet leaves here. And there's the transfer gears on top. So what we can actually do, if we need to change the bearings in this section, when they can actually move the transfer gear from the motor, and we can actually use as press tools to actually press those out. Now, you will probably find that most of these gears in here will be really nice. The ones that aren't, well, this one here will be really rough probably, and that's the one that you'll need to change. But you might find that these in here are all right. If they're not, then you'll need to develop some special tools to be able to press these out. There's one in there that's super tight, and you'll need a little bit of heat to actually get that out. There's a little ring here which is very sensitive to heat as well, so you need to be careful when you're working on that as well. But like I said, this video is not about replacing the bearings in this motor, it's about taking it to bits in the right order. So we'll just put that to one side, which leaves us basically as empty case. Now, this section here before this here is the torque sensor. As I said before, this has been damaged by its previous owner, so I've just left that in its place where it's supposed to be. And then what you need to do, basically, this whole lot will actually come out. We'll just imagine that. Okay, so this whole lot will actually come out. There's a screw there that you'll need to take out. Once that's out, then what you can actually do is you can actually lift the whole lot out of its case. And this is where underneath we need to take that particular circlip off. So we'll take that off now. We can lift the whole lot out now that we've taken that circlip out. Circlip at the bottom, we just gently pull the whole lot, and the torque sensor will come with it, which is exactly what we want it to do. Okay, and now if we need to take this torque sensor out, we'll certainly need to take the drive shell off the crankshaft, and we do that by taking these circlips off that we put on earlier on. So we'll just take those off, and then this section will come completely off. So hold the torque sensor. That's the torque sensor complete. Obviously it should have the cabling on the side. So that's a torque sensor, that's fine, we've not disturbed that. And the drive shell, which is the one-way click that you hear when you pedal backwards, that can come off completely. Okay. Inside there we've got some bushes, some nylon bushes, and there's a seal on the top there, which again is completely useless, that seal. It doesn't really do much, it needs to be a better seal than that because water can get through the outside. But nevertheless, that's this taken to bits. So what we need to do now, reversal and put it completely back together in virtually the same order that we've taken it to bits in. You can see that bearing there. So if we're just going to replace the two outboard bearings in this motor, then this is the way we'd, this is what we actually change, this bearing here and the one on the outer one. Everything else would leave as it was. So let's put this back together, the reverse procedure of what we've actually taken it to bits. So let's put this shell back on here, this drive shell. Okay. Drop it down in its place where it should be. That's it. And the next thing that we need to do basically is put these circlips back on here, and that will stop the torque sensor moving again on the on this shaft, which will damage it. So let's get that back on. That's it, and that's going to make sure that that shaft actually doesn't move, and then it not going to damage the torque sensor. Put that on as well. Okay, so now we've got that back in. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is drop the transfer gears and the motor back in its slot. Again, we need to be really careful how we do this. So we get us bolts, we offer it up, keep hold of it till you get the bolts in. Watch your fingers, because the magnets are really strong. Okay, and we'll get the other one in there, and then that will allow us to actually lower this down into the right position without catching the actual important bits underneath. Okay, so we drop that down, but again, watch your fingers. There we are. Okay, then we can take these bolts out. Okay, and then put the original screws back in. Okay, we'll just tighten these up equally. We don't need to tighten one all at once, just equally, a little bit at a time, just till it drops down in the right place. So the next thing that we need to put back on this particular motor is the actual board. Okay, the actual circuit board. So again, this is the one that we actually took off earlier on, as you can see, and you can see where the actual connections go through the housing. These three terminals here will go through this particular board in the right place. So we just gently drop that down until you can see the pins where they're supposed to be. Okay, so then once we've fastened these up, so that would normally clip back onto there and it would be actually soldered to that board. The next thing to go on would be this particular plastic cover here. It just clips on the bottom there, and that protects the actual torque sensor underneath. That's that particular section on. And the next thing that we need to do, basically, we need to get this drive cog, this big chunky drive cog, back over there. Now if you try and do this without any particular assistance, you will not get it over that particular part there, you can actually see where this bearing actually runs. So this needs to go back onto there. And we need to be careful how we get it on. Obviously we don't want to again disturb the torque sensor. So what we need to do is we need to make a little tool to actually slide over the top of there that we can actually use to slide this over the part that we've made and then back onto the shaft lower down. Now that, as I said before, these bearings in here are sprag bearings or clutch bearings, so they'll only go around a certain way. So once we've got this in its place, we'll just drop that on there very, very carefully. Just slide it round till it starts to turn. And so there we go, it's started to move down onto there, okay? And we just lower it down, keep going until it finds its way onto the lower shaft. There we are. Okay, and that'll just gradually just drop into the right place. There we are. And then we can take this sleeve off that we've made to actually enable us to get that back on there. And that now is in its rightful place. So let's get that circlip back on that side, and then we're not moving that around. And that's going to keep everything in the right place where it should be on that side, so that shaft can't move around either. So what we need to do now then is bob this case back on the motor. So we'll drop the gasket on first. Okay, that's nicely lined up in its place. Okay, drop the little plastic cover on the transfer gears, get the right way around. Okay, and then just bob this case back over here very, very carefully, so it drops nicely into place. There we are, nice and snug. And then all we need to do is just nip it up. Drop as little rubber things behind after you've cleaned them, obviously. Make sure that's nicely sealed in its place. There we are. One motor back together, Gen 4. Just like that. Well, not quite as easy as that. That is probably one of the most difficult motors to do. Once you're in there and you know how it comes to bits and how not to damage it, then it's reasonably straightforward. The bearing removal of those transfer gears is an absolute nightmare, okay? And it's in a different video altogether, but you get the idea of how the Gen 4 motors come apart without damaging that torque sensor. And it's super important that that's the way it's done. If you don't do it like that, you'll say goodbye to your motor. So, thanks for subscribing, thanks for watching, thanks for all your support over COVID. My head's still a bit weird, but there you go. My head were weird anyway beforehand. So, thanks for watching. Any questions, comments, please leave them below. And don't forget, if you need some bearings for them, Performance Line Bearings is the place to go. Toodle pip.